I'm saying that, or the anonymous is saying that, is there any legal recourse for employees who had their salaries slashed and do not get stipend for data and power, despite the fact that the pandemic did not affect the revenue inflow of the employer because they render advisory services and employees have been delivering on assigned tasks?
Thanks. Let me quickly put a caveat out there that what I'm going to say is not legal advice because I have not seen all the facts. But from what you've stated, I get the sense that there was no discussion between staff with respect to the slashing of the salary, and also no discussion with respect to who bears the cost for X, Y, and Z. In answering that question, it will depend on the circumstances of the case. What kind of rights accrue to the employer and the employee under the employment contract? Now, if the employment contract or handbook give the employees a wide leverage, they may be able to do the things you have spoken about. However, I'm of the opinion that if it can be proved that nothing affected the business, this, for example, you're working in Zoom and your revenue actually went up by 100%, then there can be no basis upon which you will be slashing salaries or not trying to ensure that people are productive. If I may had made the point that in this period, some employees have actually used this as a means of, saving cost. So to answer the question pointedly, I would need to see the documents and offer advice as to whether or not in this kind of circumstance there can be a recourse for salaries, because payment of half salaries is still salaries owed. Let me make that clear. If your salary is 100 naira and the guy says, look, I'm sorry, I only pay you 50 naira for now, you are still owed 50 naira. It's a different case from when both of you have discussed and now said we are changing your salary from 100 naira to 50 naira for XYZ period. So if things get better, you are still owed the half salary that you were not paid when times were down. I wanted to make that point clear.
Thank you so much for that. I'll proceed to the next questions. I think that this has been answered in the along the line, but I will still project the question so that we can speak to it. It should be going to Nefemi. Nwachukwu Abenogo is saying, I have videos on working from home. Who bears the cost of extra data and power consumption? Also, I have noticed that. Are you with me, Nefemi?
Yes, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Also, yes, very clearly. Also, I have noticed that most employers do not respect the normal working hours. They will send you emails at orders and expect almost instantaneous responses. How do we address this? This is more or less an employer and employee issue, but I would need you to speak to it if there's anything you can add to it.
I'm sorry, okay. It's a struggle. What I wanted to say is that, first of all, we need to understand that these are peculiar times, right? And I understand what the person is saying about, the employer reaching out at odd times and all of that. But then it's also about you being accountable, right? So I think that, and I always say this a lot of the time, is that one of the things that is a struggle in Nigeria, and not just in Nigeria peculiarly, but I mean, I see a lot of this in Nigeria, is there's an entitlement mentality, right? And it's not easy. I don't own a company, but I know it's not easy to run a company. So yes, it's understood that you're required to work 8 hours a day. Your normal work hours is 8 to 5, for example, and all of those things. But these are peculiar times. So yes, I don't subscribe to the employer sort of taking advantage of that and not allowing you to have a work-life balance. But at the same time, as an employee, I believe that we should be open to, to be flexible at this time, if you get what I mean. So it's just around having an open mind, having open conversations. There are some people, for example, who have kids, who are not able to be efficient at some times because they need to, cater for their kids. Kids are homeschooling and all of those things. So there are all those complications. And then they need to put in the work later in the day. So it's just around what is working for you at this time, communicating it to your line manager or whoever needs to understand, and then working within that respect. So if, for example, for you, I definitely cannot work in the night, am I putting in the sufficient time that I need to put in during the day? So am I genuinely working my 8 hours? Or I'm not working my 8 hours and I'm saying I don't want to work at night? So there's no one way answer to these things. It's just around, being transparent and just being flexible and having an open mind. And helping, let's say everybody's going through this in different ways. So just being open about how this is affecting you and what is available to you, and ensuring that you are productive in the time you've committed to be. That would be my own advice, to the second part of that question. I think to the first part around, who pays for data and all of those things. As an employer, right, the ideal thing is that you make the resources available for your employees to be able to work. That's the ideal. That's what the ideal situation is. But then what if the employer can genuinely not afford it, So these are different things that there's just no one answer to it, but it's just how do we, and that's why I said it's a shared responsibility and one that needs to be done, with accountability. So how does the employer ensure that they are communicating and they are transparent? And as employees, how are we receiving this information and doing our own parts to sustain the company?
Okay, before you go, Nifemi, I would still come back to you on this question. I think most of these questions attendees need to seek professional advice. We can only discuss on educative level or interactive level. Most of these questions are specific, and I would want attendees to know that most of these questions will be answered in a professional way. We are on air now, and most of these questions can only be answered in a general approach, as the case may be. This person is asking, where an employee who is working remotely is injured during normal working office hours, let's say 8 a.m. to 6 p.m., is the employer liable, and how do we apportion the risk and liability? Did you get that?
Yes, I did. And I hope you can hear me clearly. Okay, so we have the Employee Compensation Act, right? And we have this whole NSITF and all of these schemes that are responsible for injury at the workplace. So one of the things that needs to speak to that is, how is the workplace defined in the employee's contract, right? So is your workplace defined as wherever you're working, or is it defined as the office space, right? So for example, in a lot of people's contracts, where they put the location of the office, the exact location of the office. That's one of the things that we would start to see leaving. So for example, you start to see employers say, maybe put their address and they say anywhere or remotely or any of those things. So those are some of the factors that might apply to where is defined as the workplace. Yes, the employer is still responsible. And then if there's a communication from your employer to you saying that, for now you need to work from home, within that period, then that's your workplace, So today we don't have rules or laws that specifically call this out. I mean, Vincent spoke to how outdated our labor law is, all of our laws are really quite outdated. So we don't have things that specifically state to this. But when the situations happen, these are some of the things that will be used as evidences to say, okay, did this happen during work time? Was this person actually working? So it's interesting things that will start to happen. We will see these cases, we will start to learn from them as they come, but there is no one way answer to say that this is exactly what's going to happen. But then once there's conversation with you and your employer sort of documented to say that that place where you are is your workplace at that time, then definitely you can get compensation for it. But it's still an evolving trend, is what I'll say.
Yeah, let me just quickly add to that. I can refer the person to Section 7 of the Employer Compensation Act, and I'll quickly read. It says, any employee, whether or not in a workplace, who suffers any disabling injury arising out of or in course of employment shall be entitled to payment of compensation in accordance with Part 4 of this Act. So from that itself, if whatever the disabling injury you occasioned during working hours, whether or not in a workplace, as long as it was in the course of your employment, by that Employee Compensation Act, you should be entitled to some compensation, and it provides a type of compensation. So the person can refer or just Google Employee Compensation Act 2010.
Okay, thank you for that. I will be proceeding to the next question. Is from Mometo Patrick. He's saying, in most companies, the employee handbook is the supposed law that guides everyone. In view of this, does employers still have the right to update their employee handbook whenever they please? That's to Vincent.
Yes, thank you, Patrick. Now, for what I've seen from experience is that when people are employed, you are given a simple one-pager employee contract, which states that the employee handbook will be part of your employee contract. The interesting thing is that nobody gets that handbook until after they have signed the employee contract. And in most times, people enter into these contracts without knowing the contents of the handbook. Now, once you sign that, you are bound by the employee handbook. Now, another clause that I know is in the employee handbook, or in most employee handbooks, is that it reserves the right to the employer to change at any time. So if that kind of clause is in the employee handbook that reserves the right to change to the HR or approval by the MD, then there can really be no input by by the employee. However, if that clause is not there, then there has to be a conversation, usually between employee and employer. And where there's a change, you should be issued the handbook, and there's an execution of like an addendum saying that you are now bound by that handbook. I trust that answers the question.
Okay. We have limited time. I just need Valentine to answer this question in 30 seconds, if possible. This person is asking a very direct question. He's saying, now that businesses have resumed and things are seemingly going back to normal, at what point should salary slashes be reversed? This person wants to know when the new normal would stop.
So far, I need to start with the last phrase. The new normal is not yet normal. Because for now, we are still looking at it. We don't really know. But as soon as, for now, if you observe the economy is not fully open, we are just still trying to patch on. But as soon as the economy patch on, this is something that cannot hide. This employee will know that things are going well. So for now, he should just be focused on being accountable to his job and get things being done. Things will revert. Every organization is not there to use or jeopardize the staff integrity. What they are interested in at this point in time is to make sure the staff is being productive, and as soon as things improve for the organization, the salary can be reverted to the normal. But as at presently now, the normal is not yet normal. We are just trying to patch to see how things is going to be.
Maybe just to add.
Thank you, Valentine, for that. We have, okay.
Just to add quickly, TD, that the employee can also just ask. I've realized that employees tend, or both ways, tend to make a lot of assumptions. So even things may seemingly look like they are going well because the employer is trying to give confidence to the employees. He may have borrowed that money. He may have sold his soul, you don't know. So let the employee just simply fix a meeting with the HR person, ask the questions pointedly, no HR person, speak with the owner of the business, just to allay your fears. I would say, please don't assume. Assumptions will always make an ass of you and me.
Thank you so much for that, Vincent. We have less than 10 minutes to conclude. I have one last question. I would like all the panelists to answer as I called on them. Many employees don't, this is coming from Olaoluwa Aduloju, sorry for that. He's saying many employees don't really have a legal bidding when they take up jobs. I don't understand what legal bidding was. He says many employees don't really have a legal bidding when they take up jobs. And this made it easy for employers to fire, cut salaries, or come up with some policies that are not favorable for employees, as we all know. As we all know, many employees take up jobs because they are desperate about getting the jobs. How does an employee retain and fight for his job in this situation? I would like Nifemi to take that just in 2 minutes, from Nifemi to VA, and then VI would give us the legal perspective to that. So from Nifemi.
Definitely. I mean, I'm looking forward to the legal perspective. So for me, what I'm going to say is that we probably have all found ourselves in that situation of, you know, if you know better, you do better. And that's what I always say. And, you know, the thing is that with your current employer and with your current contract, you know, there's probably not a lot you can do about it, right? So, you know, going forward, maybe you definitely need to be clearer in terms of what you sign. You know, you can give a legal, I mean, just seek legal counsel if you think it's necessary, but then, you know, sort of read through the elements of your contract clearly before you sign. I think that's one thing that a lot of us can take away from this time. But then, like we said, you know, at the end of the day, the contract is the law, is the holy grail in the employer-employee relationship for a lot, you know, and in some cases, you know, the Labor Act, depending on what kind of employee, you know, you are. So I'll just say that, you know, you ask questions, right? You know, ask questions when you're about to take up a job. You know, if there are things that you're not clear about, ask questions. Ask all the right questions. Sometimes people feel like they don't want to ask questions because, you know, I don't want to be seen as desperate. I don't want to piss the employer off, you know, different elements. But the truth is that, you know, if you're asking sort of informed questions, not just asking questions for question's sake, you know, the people that are trying to employ you will understand. So ask questions, you know, and definitely, you know, ensure that you're clear on what it is that you're signing. For your current employment, you know, and your current contract, there's really nothing there's not a lot you can do about it because it's binding, you've signed it whilst you're in that employment, except it's terminated. So I say that the lessons are just for future contracts that anybody wants to sign. That would be my own take.
Thank you, Nifemi. Thank you so much. For time constraints, Val, I'll just need a 1 minute contribution from you to that question. He's saying that many employees don't really have a legal backing. I guess he wanted to write backing when they take up jobs. And this makes it easy for the employers to fire, cut salaries, or come up with policies that are unfavorable to them because they are desperate about the jobs. He's now saying, how does an employee retain and fight for his job in this situation? Just 1 minute, I would appreciate it.
Firstly, like what Nifemi said, that nobody is being forced to sign any contract that is not that is impossible to them. It is not something you force anybody to sign. Like she asked, you need to, like she said, asking of question is very key. Wherever you want to work, you need to understand. But I discovered something of most employees getting the job, they are just interested in the salary. Sorry to use this word, in the salary, but not how to be productive on the job. It's a big problem. Most of them, what they are just interested is, big money. Yes, I'm interested in this job, but being productive on the job, they don't care. And that's from the perspective of the employer, is interested in what? Achieving results, not the salary. And at the end of the day, if you're not achieving results, some of them, out of annoyance, they can't be able to hold on or to have that unnecessary fees being paid. They have to fire. Despite sometimes it's very unlawful. They might not go through the right channels in firing. They just do it without even looking at things being done. So I expect every employee should ask questions, should also be prepared that he or she can be able to do the said job before accepting the job. Thanks.
Thank you so much, Va. Over to Vincent. Vincent's response is going to be twofold. First, you would help us speak to this question by Olaluwa Duloju, and then there's an anonymous question which I want you to take in 2 minutes, if possible. Sure. He's saying, what is the hope for entrepreneurs with hanging payments from clients? Because everyone is blaming pandemic for their shortcomings.
I'll answer the second one first, and it's very easy. Get a good lawyer. It's it's that straightforward.
It's as easy as that.
Yeah, you know, the lawyer would advise on the steps you can take. People have used this as an excuse, and he can advise on legal steps to take in recovering your money. With respect to the first question, I'm guessing he's saying that for those who don't have like maybe written contracts, well, you need to juxtapose the actions of your employer with what is provided for in the Labor Act to see if it contravenes any, and know what your recourse will be. But Val and Nifemi have made the points very clearly. It's usually a willing employer, willing employee situation. And once that is eroded, what you realize is that you think you are being forced to go into a job. Nobody forces anybody to sign a contract. And unless it's slavery, which is illegal, your options are to either renegotiate with your employer or resign and find something that you think better. But from experience, and Val was spot on that, most people are not bringing value to the table. So even most people realize that they are in a system where they're not being promoted. The guy they came in with is moving on, and they say, oh, Oga likes him better. But you realize that that guy who has the same 24 hours, same laptop, same no internet, seems to be just productive. He always finds a way. He's a go-getter. But you are more interested in, they said it's half salary. So since it's half salary, I will not do anything. Oh, my work is 8 to 6. Once it's 6:01, I don't answer emails until the next day. Once it's Saturday. Employers too are human, and they will naturally judge on the things, the soft skills. So you may be brilliant, but your attitude to work may not just be the best. But a guy who is not as brilliant is just a hard worker. You hit him down, he comes back again, and he keeps driving. What is the differentiating factor for you within your society, your organization?
Thank you so much, Vincent, for that. With this, we have come to the end of the presentations and the questions and answer session. I would want to reiterate that the discourse here does not end here. It's inexhaustive. So, and it does not substitute for professional advice. So if you need to seek professional advice, you know who to contact after this, so that you can proceed with that. But for further questions, you can send to us at info@aetoslegal.com and aetoslegal@gmail.com. We can channel some of these questions to our panelists here, who would, I know, who would be willing to answer them. And in case of professional advice, you know what to do. We really appreciate your time on this program, and we wish that next time where we would ask you to be part of this type of webinar, you will be willing and able to join us. I thank the panelists most especially. I thank Vincent, I thank Valentine, and I thank the lady in the house, Nifemi, for honoring our invitation to be part of this program. From this, I would say goodbye.
Thank you,
Thank
Tomo,
you.
for
Thank you so
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you,
very much.
Nifemi.
Bye,
Thank you, Mr.
everyone.
Vincent. Thank you, moderator. We appreciate. Stay blessed.
All right, thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.